Alliance in our grand finals, starting it up right now in Theater of Pain.
All right, and so it's now going to be the battle of Horde versus Alliance, as Complexity has been running that Night Elf Alliance comp, and Obey Alliance has been favoring that more Blood Elf, Arcane Torrent, racial-focused Horde composition. Dratnus, what are you thinking about the racial choices between these two teams?
Yeah, it's a very cool difference, right? Because you get a huge amount of utility from both the Shadow Melds and the Arcane Torrents. It's just a question of, like, what are you getting more value out of? And also, how much are you happy about getting the opportunity to play the Holy Paladin versus the Resto Druid? Both teams getting started here with some big pulls into the first boss. Complexity have gone a little bit bigger here, if I'm not mistaken, whereas Obey Alliance have skipped that first pull, maybe dealing with that thing later while they wait for some RP.
Yeah, and you see Fired Up on screen there, he has a trap set behind him in case that rogue comes out of stealth and stuns him. He will be able to get himself immediately out of that stun just due to that freezing trap. So that's really good. It's a really good strategy if you're looking and you're playing a hunter at home. Just drop that trap on top of yourself. If you're playing with multiple ranged even potentially, you can also stack up on top of that. And so one of the big things too is that Resto Druid pick versus that Holy Paladin pick that we talked about. Do you have any preference between the Resto Druid and the Holy Paladin? Because I think that the Holy Paladin is generally going to be a lot more damage, but the Resto Druid probably provides a decent amount more stability on that Grievous affix.
Yeah, so that is one of the big strengths of the Restoration Druid. It's just a kit that naturally counters the Grievous affix, right? You can just put your hots on people before they even get into Grievous range and do effective healing against the affix there, and also just a hot naturally counters a dot in a really nice way. But you know, look at the damage meters here, right? You can see JB ending that pull around 6,000 DPS, whereas Lagbug for Obey Alliance closer to 13,000. So double the damage that JB is putting out there. I think it is definitely a case of the Resto Druid is like it's a comfort pick. It's adding damage to somebody else in your group through the Kindred Spirits empowerment, which doesn't show up under JB's damage, but is damage that he's effectively adding to the group. And it's extra damage for everybody that doesn't have to do crazy stuff to stay alive because they have a Holy Paladin that doesn't have wings up trying to heal them and physically incapable of making their health bar go up.
So one of the things that I think that Obey Alliance does in this dungeon that I really hate is this Executioner Varuth pull by itself. Because whenever you look on the left side of your screen here, you see Complexity, they grab 3 of these Shackled Souls into Varuth, and Obey Alliance ends up grabbing these Shackled Souls later into Kulturok, just into the boss. But at the same time, I have a feeling that doing this boss solo is such a time loss as a whole that if they could just grab it with those 3 Shackled Souls, it would save them a decent amount of time, and it would also activate a lot of their AoE abilities, such as that Windwalker Monk would be able to pop off. They would be able to utilize some of that Subtlety Rogue priority damage, and a Hunter would be able to cleave as opposed to doing pretty mediocre single target damage.
So this may actually be a symptom of the Resto Druid, right? If you look at that, JB was putting out 7,000 HPS through a 50% healing reduction aura. Can a Holy Paladin provide that without, it being a tremendous struggle? Maybe not, though. Maybe that's a pull that is enabled by that off-meta choice from J.B there, as you can see in that beautiful Feral Druid artifact appearance in cat form, the blue one. Personal favorite of mine as well, as they get started with this big pull, several Shackled Souls for both teams, into the Incinerator and into the Portal Guardian. Again, tremendous group-wide AoE coming out onto both teams here.
Yeah, and whenever we were watching Obey Alliance versus Complexity in this dungeon earlier on today, Obey Alliance was already a little bit further progressed through like where in the dungeon they were. They had gotten a little bit of a lead over Complexity because Complexity did elect to play a lot more trash on top of that first boss, so it ended up saving them it ended up costing them a little bit more time, and Obey Alliance was able to save some time there, but their advantage is that they are more progressed through the dungeon, and Complexity looks like they are keeping up blow for blow with them right here.
Yeah, you can see both teams here zooming through the dungeon. Both teams are heading... Actually, no. So Obey Alliance are heading right, and Complexity are heading left at the start here. Left is something you will rarely see. It is 2 extra points of count, or 0.6% extra count, depending on how you want to look at it.
And so that's a symptom of the Alliance versus Horde stuff. Because it's double Bone Mage on the right-hand side, Complexity doesn't really want to go to that area because they can't get the purges on both of those mobs. Sure, they do have one purge from I'm Fired Up, but they don't have the ability to be able to get off another debuff from those double mages. But Obey Alliance, with their Arcane Torrents, being on that Horde comp, have a really easy time. They just like mash Arcane Torrent and get those shields off of those mages. But now we see an identical pull coming out of both Complexity and Obey Alliance, and Lagbug goes down.
They are going to have those battle reses available. Everybody just needs to hold on for a little bit there. The res does land, and they're able to get Lagbug up. But as Lagbug goes up, 40 goes down, and that is going to be and Brew as well. And now the Portal Guardian, it is killed. But this is so brutal, Tettles, because they have a mob they're still in combat with here. So they need to finish off this Bone Magus before they can res Lagbug. They don't have any battle reses available. And this is going to be just the world's biggest time loss, especially because their Arcane Torrent, Boo there, is on the floor, so they just have to damage through the shield. They can't actually dispel it because Skylark's Torrent is on cooldown. Obey Alliance, with this set of events, has lost something on the order of a minute, and this is so uncharacteristic for them. Yeah,
and Complexity on the other side, playing a lot more clean, having a lot more healing throughput, being able to keep their group topped up. Hey, maybe it's that Resto Druid diff. Maybe JB was onto something.
Yeah, you can see him there in beautiful high-definition camera. His background all out of focus, but himself in perfect focus in our player cam as they make their way now to the next platform. Flying through the air with that Necrolord teleporter. This platform is one where we usually see them kill almost all of the trash by dragging the big mob around in a nice little world tour.
Do you know what it's called whenever he is more in focus than his background?
Yeah, good camera stuff.
It's called a bokeh.
Okay.
So, yes, really good camera stuff, indeed. And you know what? We have a perfect vision of Complexity here, killing off all of these Bone Mages, even while they have their Bone Shield up. And now a Bone Storm going off, and Lip saying, I don't care. I will proceed to stand in this. And now the rest of the group of Complexity is off to the side, killing off these other Bone Mages, making sure that they get kicks on these Bone Spheres and these spikes. While on the side of Obey Alliance, they're able to get all 6 of these Bone Mages grouped up at once on top of the Bone Reaver. And this is something that should be a major advantage for Obey Alliance. But the time that they lost on that last platform, they're still just going to be infinitely behind Complexity. They're hoping that Complexity is going to make a mistake.
I don't know about calling that infinitely.
Look at the count, man. Look at the count.
Okay, all right. So they're behind by 10% and like 10 seconds of progression in the dungeon and 20 seconds of death differential. So they are certainly behind, but I don't think it's actually by more than a minute. I think that they are pretty close here, all things considered, and I think that they actually accelerated nicely on that last platform thanks to those Horde racials.
Yeah, I mean that should be one of the major advantages of their composition is dealing with that Bone Storm and that Bone Reaver. And so now they have this Dark Spear to deal with. They're just getting kicks, making sure to dodge out of the way of all of those fear circles on the ground that can cause problems since they don't have any decurses. And both Obey Alliance and Complexity get that platform dealt with around the same time. But again, there is a 10-ish% enemy forces differential and a 20-second death differential in favor of Complexity here.
There we see Obey Alliance are finally going to be getting started with Cult the Rock here, but yeah, 10% difference on the boss's health as well. 10 being the operative thing separating the teams in basically every category here. They are underway.
10
wow.
Years of age.
Look at Lip on damage meters here, just blasting with his Sub-Rogue opener. Really has mastered that spec.
So
Formerly
something
known
that
as a big Brett Pally player.
Yeah, something that I really don't like about Complexity's pull here is they only pulled one Shackled Soul into Cult the Rock at the beginning, and that doesn't allow your MM Hunter to be able to cleave at all because their AoE is activated at that 3 target threshold, and just pulling that one singular Shackled Soul seems super inefficient relative to. I guess it's probably because of how the inspired mobs end up playing out, but whenever you see Obey Alliance, they end up pulling 3 at a time on top of Cult the Rock, so that makes me believe that it's probably possible to do as Complexity, but at the same time, I'm sure it's been tried a bunch of times, and they're like, okay, so this is a lot safer if we just do it 1 at a time, and sure, we are biting the bullet in terms of damage efficiency, but it does come at a survivability game.
I don't know, earlier in this dungeon, you preferred Complexity's strategy of pulling several shackled souls onto Varuth. Well, now those souls aren't available to pull into the boss, whereas Obey Alliance has them. So it's, you can't pull the same mobs twice.
There's definitely some give and take. Now we have Wide fired up here. Standing, is that an orc statue? What kind of statue is that next to him?
Yeah.
Ooh, very professional.
A little Horde banner in the background as well.
Ah, so they should be playing Horde.
They should be, yeah. This is some serious faction betrayal here coming out from Fired Up.
I'm calling I'm Fired Up. All right, so now Complexity has downed Kultharok. Obey Alliance hot on their heels. Pretty big count disparity still that we need to continue to be aware of. And now Complexity goes into the Gore Chop area of this dungeon where they had major issues last time. Oh, actually, what are they doing? So it looked like somebody was making a detour to the Zav wing.
Lip was on a stealth adventure doing something over in the Zav wing, maybe triggering some RP and causing the mobs to be pre-activated so that they can just instantly pull them when they get there later. I'm not sure. You can see JB here firing off that Kindred Spirits as they get started with the pull here.
That's him changing the target that it was on.
Yeah.
So he didn't activate the Kindred Empowerment. He changed who it was linked to. And
maybe it fell off because of it's on Shakid now. Yeah, maybe he has a different one for single target and for AoE.
Potentially, like that would make sense too. It has an hour-long timer, so I doubt that it expired. Although it could have potentially have expired. That would be really funny to have happen.
I don't think so, no, because I saw him casting it earlier this dungeon as well.
Okay. It's nice to see that he is being very aware of where that Kindred Empowerment is linked to and making very cognitive decisions of like who to keep it attached to. So now Complexity is popping their Shroud, running all the way through the Gore Chop wing. They don't want anything to do with any of the remainder of this trash. This trash is not for them. However, this trash and this pull is for them. And this is going to be one of their Bloodlust pulls. And it's probably one of the most dangerous packs in all of the Shadowlands dungeons.
Yeah, you can see they trapped that Inspiring Mob up at the top there, and one of the big advantages of their comp is that once this pull is done, they will be able to Shadow Meld off combat with that thing. But in order to get there, they're actually going to have to kill this pull, which is so scary. So much stuff here. You can see the beautiful Spear of Bastion coming down from Scott, keeping all of those mobs that love to jump around just a little bit better, tightly packed. Wow, look at this Grievous on everybody, but JB is healing up a Storm here. 18,000 HPS coming out for Complexity as they have gotten through the worst of it. They have weathered the storm. The big mobs are going down, and they have survived this pull and earned a ton of count for the trouble.
Yeah, Obey Alliance on the right side of your screen doing a very similar pull, but not to be defeated. Complexity grabbing even more trash. They've burned all of their offensive CDs on that most recent pull, and they're still pulling even more trash into Gore Chop. This is going to be really dangerous for your tank, but we talk about it time and time again. Prot Warrior, a very powerful tank versus physical damage, and this Horror and this Butcher do mostly physical damage, and Gore Chop with his Hateful Strike, also a big physical damage doer, and so Scott on that Protection Warrior should be in pretty good shape.
Yeah, he's kind of low on defensives, but he does have that shield, and that shield is kind of all you need as a Prot Warrior. You just make sure you hold that thing towards the enemies, but he is playing the Spear of Bastion Legendary, which means he won't have full uptime on it, as Fired Up there does end up taking a chunk of damage, but Complexity are able to stabilize and recover this one. Trash here nearly dead, not quite finished off though just yet. Once they can kill off this trash, they'll just have the boss to deal with, but Obey Alliance have also gone with trash into boss. They are not far behind either here, and they're catching up a little bit in terms of count also as this trash is going down, and they pulled a little bit more in this section of the dungeon than Complexity did.
Yeah, because they pull some of that bridge trash, whereas Complexity was electing to Shroud skip past it. Obey Alliance, does claw back a hair of their trash, and then they gain the remainder of their trash in that Zav wing. But again, that 4 death differential, Lip there with the moves, shadow stepping the boss, but that 4 death differential in favor of Complexity is putting them, I would say, one mistake ahead of where Obey Alliance currently stands, especially whenever they are somewhere around 30% ahead on a boss. And now Complexity is going to make their way towards the final wing of Theater of Pain.
Up they go, using those meat hooks to travel. That must not be a particularly comfortable way to travel, but they've chosen to do it anyways for the time save.
It depends on how you sit on it, right? So if you can fit if you can fit in between the hook, you don't have to sit on the very rough edge, that pointy edge. So that could be nice. At the same time, if you were playing a larger model character such as a Tauren, then it could be problematic.
Yeah, extremely uncomfortable for those Tauren. Luckily, Complexity here have a bunch of dwarves there. Yeah, you can see certainly not looking like a pleasant experience there for Obey Alliance. But they've gotten up here, as they have had to rename to Obey Horde as a result of their faction swap for this map. So we'll be updating that soon. Don't worry, everybody.
I think that's a sponsorship. I don't know if we're going to be renaming that. Complexity here, dealing with one of the mini-bosses plus the Arbalest conscript pack. You do see Sagadon off to the right side. Sagadon is commonly skipped in MDI rounds, and that is actually a very dangerous pull, one I would not advise to skip at home, because it is very easy to get Sagadon pulled during Zav's boss fight due to how the PvP duels work. But these teams have practiced this so many times that they know precisely where they have to be standing during the Zav encounter to make sure that Sagadon does not get pulled.
Yeah, we've seen last weekend Sonic's Imperative model for us all the different ways that can go wrong if you try to skip Sagadon. So hopefully both teams here have watched that, learned from those mistakes, and will be able to avoid the mid-fight, basically unrecoverable wipe if that mob gets in combat with you.
All right, so now Complexity here, getting that champion ringed out of the pack. That inspired mob, they do not want to be dealing with that right now. And now they have it trapped off to the side while they are dealing with this mini-boss plus this Arbalest pull. This is a very scary pull because of the double Arbalest. And depending on which mini-boss you can have upwards of 3 bleeds on one singular player, and now you see the dwarf racials being chunked through. Lip doesn't have his up for another 20 seconds, whereas Fired Up does have access to his in case he gets targeted.
And shout out to production, they have correctly changed the team name up to Obey Horde. Love to see it.
Hold on, I don't think you should do that.
Much more accurate team name here for our oceanic competitors, as they are also zooming through this wing so close behind Complexity. You do have to remember, though, they will need that extra count. They do have the count waiting for them at the start of the dungeon, though. The start of the dungeon does contain about 7% that I think Obey Alliance mostly still has left up there, so they won't need to go and do anything too crazy to get the last little bit of their count. They are not too far behind, but if Complexity can just stay on target here, they won't give them the opening to sneak back into this one.
Yeah, Complexity now dealing with Zav the Unfallen. At this point, I think that they would have to have some Sagadon-related issues here. So the first duel is going to be coming out after this combo from Zav. And right as I say that, JB gets killed off. They should be able to get an engineering res on him. Yeah, Shakib gets that cast before the last part of the combo comes out, and now Lip and Shakib have been selected to go do that PvP duel. I don't know if they were... It looks like this. Oh, no, Sagadon has been pulled for Complexity.
No, Tuttles, this is not...
they melded it off. Did they meld off Sagadon? Oh no, he's still in combat.
Oh, prepare for bad news soon. Sagadon is there. He's looking at them. He's about to teleport up here and end their whole careers right now. Here they go. Maybe the debuff. The debuff is that even looking at them? JB has the debuff, but it looks like it's fallen off of all of them. Maybe they did successfully meld it. Oh my goodness.
My God. If they were able to get a meld off and drop aggro from Sagadon, that is absolutely insane, because you saw Shakib, he popped his meld whenever he got into combat with it, but it looked like it was still in combat with the rest of the group, and Lip didn't end up vanishing it at all. So I don't know how they were able to do it, but Complexity has gone and done it.
They have completed some sort of dark ritual there to prevent Sagadon from teleporting up to them. Something has been sacrificed for sure, as Complexity now have 98% trash count, and JB is going to fire off the Stampeding Roar to make his way up to the final boss room here just as quickly as possible, activating that RP, which is going to be the last thing that's gating them from stopping this dungeon.
Yeah. And they do have that one mob at the top left, as well as this ancient captain that you do see the remainder of their party dealing with this one inspired mob. They keep, oh gosh, what is the names of those mobs that are at the beginning that he melds off? Oh. Anyways, they're not going to have to deal with it.
The skeleton things.
Yeah. The one that enrages, that takes increased damage whenever it's enraged, doesn't really matter. Complexity doesn't have to deal with it. They only have the final boss left in their sights. And if they can get through this boss without any mistakes, then they should be able to take down this first map.
Mordretha becomes available, and they immediately pull, getting started with the very last boss fight at 100% count. Just one death on the board as well, so they are well ahead in terms of time. Obey Alliance are finishing off that same captain as well, and will be heading upstairs to fight Mordretha if Complexity give them the opportunity, but Complexity are intent on not making that happen. As long as they can avoid a wipe on this fight, they will be able to secure a 1-0 lead in this pivotal series that potentially has important ramifications for the Global Finals tournament seeding.
Yeah, Complexity still has their Bloodlust available, and right as I say that, they immediately use it and are starting to burn Mordretha. Once they do push the boss to 50% HP, she will enter the next phase where she will summon those skeleton-style mobs that do their clash ability, that can either, the bulls that can either charge across the room, or just the clash mobs that will do that circle that around them. And if you get hit by that, you'll effectively die, and it's pretty dangerous whenever you do have the Aura's Foldheart slow, but Complexity with the Lust is absolutely burning through Mordretha's health.
Huge amounts of damage here coming out from their whole team as the boss finally burns down. They've dodged the last rough combo there, and this is the boss finally dying. 20 minutes and 35 seconds is going to be Complexity's time as they advance 1-0 up in the series against Obey Alliance.
That's right, Complexity improving on some of their previous times in Theater of Pain, taking that victory. And once again, Zyro bouncing back from what looked like there'd be a wipe here and there. We can get
Zyro.
I'm back. Sorry, guys.
Hey.
Ronic.
Hey,
Ronic,
what's
where
up?
are you?
Hey there, Zyronic.
Hey, welcome back.
Yeah.
Hey, welcome back.
Hey.
Glad to have you with us.
I was finishing
Oh,
up over there.
Jack asked you something about the match, but just go with whatever you wanted to say about it.
Oh, yeah.
Almost having wipes, of course, to some of the casts going off. Almost having wipes due to pulling Sagadon, and you know, Complexity just finds a way to put it back together, man.
Yeah, well, it did the same thing in this dungeon, actually, like, when Obey Alliance had the lead in the upper finals as well earlier on.
Yeah.
And, I mean, they kind of just got bailed out by Obey here, by them making mistakes early on. Like, honestly, I'm not going to lie, I kind of zoned out after Obey Alliance started making mistakes because it looked like they're kind of at the end of the rope. They've been playing all day, and they honestly look pretty tired.
Man, Zyro, you keep jinxing it, man. I gotta tell you, listen, Obey Alliance has Complexity right where they want them, okay?
Exactly.
You know?
Yeah.
They are
Complexity
the reverse
actually
sweep team.
needed to lose this game to avoid Obey Alliance being able to reverse sweep them. So this
right.
they played right into Obey Alliance's trap here. This
Yeah.
is a classic error here, a classic blunder.
Yep. And you know, Obey Alliance, they have their trap cards placed. They're ready to send Complexity into the Shadow Realm and everything on that one. It's just part of the strategy, and it's been working out really well for them lately, Tettles. And you know, this is also going to be an interesting test as well, because Tettles, you were saying this theater is going to be the pivotal dungeon, where I'm saying the next one is.
So you think that this Halls of Atonement is going to be the pivotal dungeon? I felt like this.
Yeah.
I felt like this Halls of Atonement is more Complexity favored. Whenever we watched how they did the first couple of pulls earlier, just like the double Shard of Halkias off the rip with the double Mage comp, felt like it was just a lot better setup for Complexity. Whereas Obey Alliance, they're playing a little bit more conservative, and it is necrotic and sanguine, so you can afford to play more conservative and hope your opponents wipe, I guess.
I mean, it was still a 14-minute dungeon, so it's still just like lightning fast
slow
throughout this. So
sure.
I feel like dungeons like this are Complexity's specialty, though. I feel like they are really good at dungeons that are like 5 incredibly hard pulls. I feel like where they struggle is dungeons where it's like 20 medium difficulty pulls. I feel like in those dungeons you see them just kind of have 1 or 2 of those pulls go a little bit wrong, have a boss fight go wrong in some kind of weird way. But when it's like 5 pulls that are all super hard, where you need everything to work out well for you, that's when just something clicks in their heads and they're able to make it happen. And Halls is exactly that kind of dungeon.
yeah, I think I would agree with that, and that's why it's always so important to look for, does Obey Alliance actually have the potential to be able to make sure that they can take the victory off of them, because it's like you mentioned, something that's going to take a lot more time, like we just saw at a Sanguine Depths or Theater. You know, they're always going to be prone to those mistakes. We saw some catastrophic ones earlier today as well, Zyro, and the other side that Complexity narrowly was able to put back together and finish the dungeon.
Yeah, I mean, as cool as that play was, the thing about those plays is you have to make the mistakes to get them, and obviously mistakes aren't exactly what the teams are going for, so we're not going to really see plays like that too often. But this Halls of Atonement is going to be an interesting one, right? Because, and Dreadnoughts just covered it, it seemed like Complexity just had a better routing and strategy for the entire dungeon. Now, it did end up being pretty close near the end, but if all things play out the same and both teams play just as cleanly, I mean, it should be another win for Complexity. Honestly, looking back at that upper finals match, I feel like Complexity had more errors and more room to gain time from than Obey Alliance did.
Yeah, and that was something that, you know, we've been looking at and kind of scratching our heads at a bit, that Complexity has gotten the #1 seed for this group. They have gone through the upper bracket. They were the first ones to get to the grand finals here, but it's really off the back of a number of different mistakes that seem uncharacteristic for a team at this level. Whereas Ambition got knocked out of the tournament titles, but they had so many dungeons that were just 0 deaths, very strong performance, very, very quick and efficient through it. So it's really kind of interesting how that works out.
Well, maybe it is the consistency that we always talk about, and whenever you make a mistake, Complexity is quick to be able to recover from the mistake. Pulling Sagadon, great example of that.
Yeah,
I'm still not sure how they got
now.
combat dropped. I'm still not sure how they got combat dropped on Sagadon. That was miraculous that they were able to recover from something like that, and we've seen it. We saw it wipe your boys from Sonic's Imperative last weekend, where Sagadon just got pulled and gripped everybody down off the platform, and Complexity looked good, and we're able to not have a minor error turn into a complete catastrophe, and that's where I think their specialty lies, and they do capitalize on their opponent's mistakes very heavily.
They do, and that's what's always going to be necessary for, you know, something like the MDI, because as much as you want to practice, as much as you want to be able to put all the time in the world into perfecting something, Dreadnoughts, there's always going to be mistakes that are made. There's always going to be different errors, and how you recover and mitigate those problems is always going to make the biggest difference.
Yeah, it's an important philosophical part of the mindset as well when it comes to how you practice, right? Is do you just reset after something goes a little bit wrong? Just reset the dungeon, say, all right, if that happens, we're going to lose? Or do you just force yourself to get this muscle memory of like recovering from things going a little bit wrong? And what your answer is to that question, it'll affect what kind of team you end up being, right? Whether you end up being this team that's like high consistency, only has the pulls work well, but when something goes wrong, it's over. Or whether you're one of these teams where it's like, you're kind of, you're able to just make these recoveries because you have the ability to just, you know, you figure out exactly what's important and how you can save this pull. And I think that like Fired Up in particular on the side of Complexity is the master of that improvisation, and when something does go wrong, preventing it from being a full-on wipe, as both teams are getting started here with some massive, massive pulls.
Yeah, notably Complexity's pull here, double Shard of Halkias, so twice the trouble. And it's important to note that their second Shard of Halkias doesn't normally get into the pack until a lot later, and so they end up having to deal with that mob. Just it ends up taking them substantially longer, where Obey Alliance here, they run to this the front of the dungeon, the front of the beginning of the dungeon, I guess is the only way to describe it, off of this podium area. They kite all of these mobs around, make sure to drop Sanguine perfectly, but they're only dealing with one Shard of Halkias, so their pull takes them substantially less amount of time, but they end up doing around two more pulls in the dungeon just in total over Complexity, and Complexity was able to get their first pull dealt with almost perfectly. They are downing this second Shard of Halkias here in a couple moments, and they grab this Groundskeeper into them.
Yeah, so if you just look at the enemy forces count, this looks good for Obey Alliance, but you absolutely have to factor in the Shard of Halkias itself is just something that hard stops your progression through this dungeon, right? You need to kill all three of those, and Complexity has dealt with two. Obey Alliance has only dealt with one as they get started now with their next big pull. Skylark already under so much pressure, even right at the start of the pull, forced to use a lot of defensive options, and now going to be choosing to kite instead of tanking these mobs.
Yeah, and we've seen him do this a lot where... So, Scott also ends up kiting on Complexity's side a lot, whether it be for Necrotic or whether it be for Sanguine. But whenever they're running that Frost Mage, it allows their mobs to stay grouped up a lot more. It's just like a pretty big clump. Ooh, Skylark Prox is cheat to this pack. Oh, I really don't like that off the side of Obey Alliance. Oh no.
Yeah, definitely an important defensive option that he doesn't have available now, and also doesn't have meta or even Fell Devastation for a while. So he is definitely in danger of just dying if he's not careful. They are almost done with this pull, though. As you can see, things starting to kind of slow down for Obey Alliance, but Complexity getting another massive line of sight pull sorted out here. Houndmaster's not really cooperating, though, as they immediately start jumping out of this pull as soon as the CC breaks.
Yeah, so now Obey Alliance is grabbing this 3-pack patrol, and on top of that, they're grabbing one of these Stoneborns and pulling all of this into the Shard of Halkias, where Complexity, they're gearing up to pull their 3rd shard here in just a couple moments. If they can get this Obliterator out of Sanguine, please move.
They've done it. Scott is nearly dead, but not quite. He does have 2 stacks of that nasty bleed from the Gargans, but he's okay as they now get healed up and get ready to start this big pull. All of the trash basically on the right-hand side of the dungeon is going to be involved in this one, as many of their cooldowns are back. No Ashen Hallow, but most of the other stuff should be up for this. As you can see, they're using, again, that line of sight technology to just get everything nice and grouped up, and the Ring of Frost to help it be a little bit less deadly right at the start. But Scott is so low, he's taking so much damage.
He still has his cheat. He still has his cheat and he has his meta in 7 seconds. So this should be fine. He's looking to get a Necrotic reset off of all these mobs. Hopefully none of them connect with him, and he gets a really good reset at 15 stacks. So that means that he can just stand in this pack, plant, and attack it for longer periods of time, since he does have more of his active mitigation up if he wants to pop that meta.
Shakib doing so much damage on this pull on the Windwalker. This pull's so good for Windwalker with Juan and everything available. Obey Alliance, meanwhile, the 2 teams just have a completely different plan when it comes to how they're going to deal their damage, right? You can see Complexity on that double mage Windwalker. Obey Alliance breaking out the Unholy DK, something we've seen a couple of times this weekend, but not a common choice. And then also the Shadow Priest filling in for them just to help support the Fire Mage a little bit more with those power infusions.
Yeah, and so now Complexity has their 3rd Shard of Halkias dealt with. They need a little bit of time to have that Halkias' anima bar at the bottom of the screen you see fill up to 100% before the boss becomes engageable. So instead, they are going to elect to pull Incinerator Arcoleth, pull it with a bunch of these Groundskeepers, and just kite those Groundskeepers around to make sure that Scott's not going to get murdered by them. They are fairly dangerous and can get you stacked up on Necrotic pretty quick if you're not careful. And so dealing with Incinerator Arcoleth while you're letting Halkias activate, it seems like a really good intermission pull where you don't have to burn a lot of CDs.
Yeah, this is something that is, you have to find a way to deal with Incinerator at some point. You can fight the last boss with the aura, that counts as dealing with it, but that is really, really, really tough.
Yeah.
And it means you probably can't do the last boss with the healing reduction aura, which means you're pulling an extra mob right anyways, either way. So this is definitely the least bad way to deal with that mandatory pull. So yeah, Complexity definitely earning some time here. They are now at 63% count, as are Obey Alliance, however. Obey Alliance still has to deal with Arcoleth, whereas Complexity have done it, and they are now making their way towards the first boss with a huge Necrotic Sanguine trash pull that will be joining in for the fun.
Yeah, and this is where Complexity begins to take like an even bigger lead than they already previously had.
Oh, JB gets hit by that tank smash there. He's going to fire off the land hands on somebody else as well. Ashen Hallow Wings, though, huge recovery from them. Whew, that was scary for a sec.
Yeah, I think he bubbled is where he got the forbearance from. I don't. His land hands looks like it's on CD
okay,
for
land
pretty
hands
well.
on cooldown because of the forbearance, and he was targeting himself or something, and that's why it shows up like that. I see.
Yeah.
I see.
So now Lip here, also dropping pretty low, but Complexity has dealt with this pack of trash really easily. They do manage to kite the boss out of the Sanguine, not having any casualties. JB doing a great job of using that preemptive bubble, not allowing any more damage to happen to him. We saw that he had 2 stacks of that bleed from those dogs as well. Really dangerous stuff, but Complexity was able to get that trash pull dealt with. We know Obey Alliance is going to run a slightly smaller pull, but they need a major mistake from Complexity if you were an Obey Alliance fan right now.
Yeah, it's definitely not impossible. As you can see, Halkias at 1/3 of its health for Complexity and just been pulled for Obey Alliance. Obey Alliance are also going very big here. They are pulling all the same trash as well. They'll be getting up to their 80% threshold as well. Complexity will earn that as well once they finish off these groundskeepers towards the end of this boss fight. And then both teams will just have a boss, a trash pull and a boss, a mini boss, and the last boss, and that will be the rest of the dungeon for them. So this is very quickly going to accelerate towards the end of the dungeon. Obey Alliance have clawed back a little bit of time here, like a sixth of the boss's health they've regained compared to Complexity, but it is still a large time lead that Complexity have opened in the start of the dungeon here.
And I think the last two pain points that Complexity are going to have is, like you said, that trash into the boss. That trash into the third boss in this dungeon is very dangerous. And on top of that, I think that their Lord Chamberlain can cause problems. So whenever you're playing Executioner of Baruth's 50% heal reduction with Lord Chamberlain, your tank is liable to go down at any given moment. Lord Chamberlain is a boss that can, it kills tanks very frequently on live, and while this is a 19 fortified, playing with 3 Tormentor buffs is no joke.
Yeah, we've seen it cause some deaths for some other teams. They do need to make sure that doesn't happen. But once they get to that point, that will mean most of the hard stuff in the dungeon is taken care of, because there are still some really tough pulls in their future. After this boss, which in and of itself is pretty tough, thankfully it's only on a 19 fortified, so the easiest possible version of Echelon that could exist in our tournament here. Even still, quite a scary encounter. The big make or break moment in the dungeon, though, is likely to be the trash pull after this boss, which will conveniently also include the next boss. It's going to be every single trash mob, except for that tormented mob, onto the third boss, and that is a huge breaking point.
And if you have any amounts of Sanguine healing, if you have a large amount of Sanguine healing, like we saw Obey Alliance have earlier in the weekend, where they healed the boss up like 40% of her HP, that could be the moment that Obey Alliance needs to just kind of catch back up. Currently, they are a minute behind off their boss 1 split, which, oh man, they would need an absolute catastrophe, I think, from Complexity on this third boss.
Yeah, but Sanguine Healing certainly could qualify, right? If Sanguine Healing happens, then all it takes is like a little bit of damage efficiency for Obey Alliance to get back into the lead. As you can see, half a boss separating these two teams right now. That is not a huge amount at all, but it is certainly noticeable, and it is clearly in favor of Complexity right now. Echelon nearly dead for them as Scott just base tanks the smash there from the boss. Not too worried about it as the tank there. Now they're moving around to the side. They actually don't have Mind Soothe here, so they have to fight Executioner Varuth. And this is going to be the Ashen Hallow potentially from J. Oh, no, okay.
No, they visit. They visit off.
Yeah. So this is something that costs them a little bit more time because they don't have the Mind Soothe, but still find a way to skip Varuth there. Whew, for a second, I thought they were going to actually fight that thing, but no. They are onto the boss here with all of this trash.
Yeah, so look at all of this trash that's going on to the boss, and we've seen it cause some problems, but typically whenever you have like a Kyrian Vengeance Demon Hunter, they do also have access to Bop if they want to have another necrotic reset for Scott on that tank. Typically, it's not the trash that's going to cause problems. A lot of the time that we've seen it so far, it's been that Sanguine healing that's been causing issues. They have a lot of damage from that Frost Mage and that Fire Mage. And on top of that, Shakib on that Windwalker Monk, they just have a stupid amount of AoE that they can put into all of this trash. But making sure that you kite that boss out of that Sanguine right as all of those puddles drop, and make sure that she's not casting her bolts while those mobs die, that's the most important part of this pull.
Yeah, you can see they are doing a fantastic job of managing that. Very well done, as you can see the Sanguine Puddles barely going to heal anything and certainly not going to heal the boss. Oh, they got to kick fast here, actually. The boss
5%?
is
10%?
instantly getting a 10% heal. That's not going to be enough to change things here necessarily, as we now look at Obey Alliance getting started with the same pull. If they can really, really do damage here, maybe they can claw this back without a mistake on the side of Complexity, but it's going to be so tough. Bop comes out, immediately canceled on Skylark. That's a technique to get your Necrotic removed, but you have to cancel the Bop instantly to avoid everything instantly turning and killing one of your melee.
So one of the big things that we haven't talked about in terms of composition is Obey Alliance has a substantial amount more boss damage than Complexity has. And that can come back to be in their favor. I think that Windwalker Monk compared to like the Shadow Priest is going to be a decent amount less boss damage. And then on top of that, I think Frost versus Unholy DK is going to be kind of close, but the Unholy DK is going to have his army plus his Lust on Lord Chamberlain, which can turn the tide by a pretty big margin.
Yeah, I would expect that they're very comparable outside of Lust, but with Lust and Army, I would definitely give the edge to 40 on that Unholy Death Knight. Just 20% boss health separating these two teams now as Obey Alliance are hitting the gas pedal a little bit, but Complexity have found a friend. They've got a loyal Stoneborn that will be mind controlled for them right now, as the beautiful timing on when to pull it in as they now make their way towards the last mini boss here, instantly getting started on attacking it, preparing their damage for as soon as that Dark Communion finishes. They are not interested in that getting to another Dark Communion cast.
So, whenever they were doing this dungeon earlier, they almost got to a second Dark Communion cast and had to burn Bloodlust whenever Inquisitor's Cigar was at like 10% HP to ensure that they got the kill off on this. I would really hope to see that they don't have to do that again. If they had to do that again, Obey Alliance is actually in position to where they may be able to take advantage of a minor blunder like that by just having a hair too few.
So close.
Perfect.
The touch of death comes out from Shaq, though. Great work by
Good
Complexity
stuff.
as they now start the last boss here. Bloodlust is popped. They actually won't have Ashen Hallow for this for a while, but neither will Obey Alliance, so that is all equalized as well, and we are just going to be watching that boss HP. Obey Alliance need to get on this boss very soon, and they need to
Get fired up.
Yeah, fired up.
He knows that he just survived a tragedy.
Got a big grin on his face as the next statue. Oh my goodness, he is under attack.
He knows that he is just very, very narrowly matrixing out of the way of all of these statues, just dipping in. He should not be alive right now, honestly.
Obey Alliance have gotten started on Lord Chamberlain as well. They are holding their Bloodlust right now, perhaps for some more of their cooldowns to be recovered. The Army does come out, though, so we should see the Lust soon. Army and Dark Transformation used, and there's going to be the Time Warp right as the Erupting Torment comes out. So maybe that should have come out like 5 or 6 seconds ago, or maybe they have some big plan here. I don't think they're going to make it back to the Ashen Hallow, though.
They're
as
not.
Complexity are melting this boss. Neither team is going to actually, maybe even JP gets his Hallow on this. As you can see, just 5 seconds left, and yeah, they will be able to get a little bit more damage once that becomes available. You can see JP is just going to instantly hit it. Maybe not. Maybe he's not going to instantly hit the Ashen Hallow. Maybe he doesn't need it. You know what? Ashen Hallow is a crutch.
You should press that button. It's a good button. Please press.
That. No need. No need
The
for
J-Dot
Ashen
babes
Hallow.
are chanting, Ashen, Ashen, Ashen.
We're fine.
Please press
we're
the
fine.
button.
Don't need
JP,
it.
press it.
Don't need it, had it all along, never needed it, never didn't have it. As you can see, Complexity, once they kill off this boss, there will just be 5 seconds left for Obey Alliance to stop the clock, and they will not have enough time with the boss at 25% health. Complexity win our Group B weekend.
Can you cast Ashen, please?
Please press it now.
Just
Right
one
now.
post-dungeon Ashen.
Yep, just... Not that
He didn't need
BM. Congratulations to Complexity for winning our Group B finale here, taking that victory, and of course the optimal seeding as they enter the global